Thank you all for being here. And Senator Cirinio, thank you and the Senate for sponsoring this. It is really important. I was going to make a plea that they consider sponsoring this in the future, and I guess you've already committed to that. So thank you very much. I do want to say that thoughtfulness, paying attention to higher education is just critical for us, and we appreciate it. And I would also like to just preface this a little bit. The other people that are involved, the American Council of Trustees and Alumni, it is an absolutely terrific group. It is nonpartisan. They've got presidents and others from the left, from the right, from the middle. The two things I have found from the president, Michael Polyakov, and others is the facts independently, and free expression. And so I would urge you, as you want advice or counsel from your institutions, to think about consulting with ACTA. It is just a terrific group. And in conjunction with that, I will let you know, if you haven't read a lot about higher education writ large, you've got real stars this afternoon. We've got great trustees here, but these people that are speaking in the next panel, Smith, Munoz, Abbott, and Dunn, are national stars. I mean, this is like the murderer's row of the Yankees here. So you've got some great people really coming, and then Polyakov himself, and of course, Professor Vetter. So they've done a great job pulling this together. Senator Huffman said he's been involved for around 20 years in higher education. Boy, in my years past, I've been involved for 50 years, starting working with Woody Hayes, and continuing through Gordon Gee, who's been mentioned a couple of times, and had the privilege of being appointed to the Shawnee State Board of Trustees by a great governor, Dick Celeste, and then the Ohio State Board by another great governor, Mike DeWine. So been very grateful for that. However, as you know, public trust in higher education is at an all-time low by independent studies. And I don't think that's because Ohio State has lost to the school up north the last 2 years. I don't think that's the reason. But the question is, how do we address that? How do we look at the strategic direction for universities, especially from a trustee's viewpoint? And as we address that, in my mind, we've got to look at the needs of Ohio and its citizens, and maybe the research that we do. But what are the needs of Ohio? In terms of the students, how to think, not what to think, but how to think. So how do we address things like free expression and core competencies, which have been mentioned? And that is important for the trustees to contemplate. And then recent polls show 90% of the students, whether it's good or bad, 90% of the students who go on to higher education do it so they can get a job, a better job. So what competencies are needed for jobs? You know, what kinds of things outside of their majors do they have to learn to be informed citizens? What academic areas do they need to study? So I think those are the things that you might look at in your strategic directions, but each school is confronted with its own issues and directions. You hear a lot about access and affordability. We heard a lot about affordability this morning. I think those are critically important, and I'm guessing my colleagues here will address that. But I maintain access and affordability don't mean anything if you don't have excellence. Excellence in academics, excellence in some areas that you choose in your institution. So the heck with access and affordability if you're not thinking about how they're put to good use for your students and your community and the state of Ohio. So we have some samples here to stimulate your thinking as particular institutions here. Youngstown State, Akron, University of Cincinnati, and Miami University, from esteemed trustees, one who is a chairman emeritus, the others who are in the jobs now, to reflect on what they see as their strategic directions and why. And hopefully that'll stimulate your thinking and questions for how you use their thought process to look at the strategic directions that you might ascertain and choose as you go forward. With that, I'll turn it to Mr. George. They will each introduce themselves.
My name's Chuck George. From the private side, I was a CPA for 27 years. About 15 years ago, decided to get out of that line of business and became an entrepreneur and own a number of companies in Northeastern Ohio and in Denver, Colorado. I've been a trustee of Youngstown State University for 5 years. I'm currently vice chair and have enjoyed every minute of it and every challenge that comes to us that seems to be on a daily basis.
Good afternoon. My name is Christine Mayer. I'm a trustee on the University of Akron's board. I was appointed to that post in 2021, so I may be the newest member represented here. During my day job, I am the president of a private foundation in Akron called the GAR Foundation that focuses mainly on Greater Akron, on education, economic development, and arts and culture. So I am very immersed in the civics of our community, and I said yes to the University of Akron role because the community's success is tied to the university's success in just about every way.
Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Hartman. I am in my 4th year on the board at the University of Cincinnati. I also figured out a way to go on the board at the University of Cincinnati Health System. So a lot of for free work, but I do enjoy it. I am currently a corporate lawyer in Cincinnati, recovering politician. I spent 5 years as a county commissioner there, was a prosecutor as well. So this experience has allowed me to keep my hands in public policy, and have found it challenging and rewarding at the same time.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Ridenauer. I live up in Sylvania, Ohio. I served on the boards of Lourdes University up there, and I'm chair emeritus of Miami University. My last day on the board was February 28th of 2020, about a week before everything got shut down. I dodged that bullet. I'm also, just by chance, a member of a board and on the executive committee of the American Council of Trustees and Alumni. So I'm the only Ohio board member. So it's a great tie-in. So I was asked to kind of give an intro to the subject, and then we'll take questions. And we all know that strategic planning is important, but I think it's been more important than ever with what's going on, not only in the state, but in the country. So the topic of strategic planning is broad, has many different forms, and can be done very well or quite poorly. If there is not an earnest effort put forth to think logically, critically, long-term, and realistically, the effort will be a waste of time and fail. The trends in higher education in our region of declining demographics and lower enrollments are not new. ACTA pulled some data for us, and in the 10 years ending June 30th, 2021, enrollment fell at Ohio public institutions by 10% compared to 2% nationally. There are a variety of reasons that actions were not taken to address these and other negative trends. Complacency and resistance to change have allowed subvention for a long time for some of the wrong reasons. COVID-19 and the resulting federal dollars were not helpful, as it no doubt delayed decisions. Institutions can no longer wait to act, as career options and career preparation continue to evolve. Net tuition revenue compression tightens budgets, and competition among institutions will increase. The discount rate is a problem. Another data point, for the fiscal year 2022, Ohio schools offered 1,388 undergraduate programs, with 287 graduating 0 or 1. Perhaps some collaboration may be in order. Some say the model is broken. Costs are too high. The trend away from four-year degrees will likely continue. New pressures such as DEI and inflation will continue to add challenges. Institutions might think about a rolling planning approach that can address shifting landscapes more quickly. A realistic approach, or a realistic SWOT analysis, can prove invaluable as institutions plan for the future. There should be no sacred cows or surprises for the trustees. Retrenchment will become a regular part of your board vernacular. I have a certificate of strategic execution from the Harvard Business School, and they teach a very concise vision of strategic planning: strategy first, organization second, and execution implementation third. You must have some overarching and overachieving goals and initiatives. And you must also have the right team and resources dedicated, or the third stage will not be successful. Strategy can be of perspective, of position, of patterns of actions, or plans. Your institution will decide which suits your needs. The best plans fail due to too many initiatives, poor communication between senior leaders and the community, or ineffective distribution of resources. Strategic planning in higher education is a behemoth. It takes enormous amounts of time and resources. It is time to rethink the structure of planning so that institutions can be more nimble. Inclusion across campus is great, but there needs to be a rethink on how to accomplish this while speeding up the entire cycle. A comprehensive plan is necessary for the future of your institution. The planning process is not a particularly pleasant exercise, but if done well, the broader community will be directionally informed. Instituting a measurement system that Harvard calls diagnostic control systems is necessary to effectively analyze results and evaluate administrations. We all took an oath to the state of Ohio as trustees. You should look at the state and your region to position your institution to fill the needs of our citizens. Tough decisions will be made as you do what's right for your institution. You can't be everything to everybody. The good news is we have a lot to work with, and a state legislature that is invested in success. I, for one, am not willing to give up on the promise of higher education, and I wish you all the best as you engage and strategically plan. Thank you.
Mark, thanks. We thought we'd do not really case studies, but give you an example again for food for thought in your questions as we go through to these institutions. So, Mr. George, if you might go first, talk a little bit about Youngstown State and your experiences and what you're looking at in terms of strategic directions, if you would.
Yes, thank you. When I got on the board 5 years ago, we had started the strategic plan, and the underlying theme of our strategic plan is take charge of our future. And a lot of that was driven by then President Tressel's assessment of you put the football team on the field you have, not the one you wish you had. So a lot of where we started out, or how we started out, is evaluating our strengths and weaknesses at the university and then trying to determine a plan to move forward. We focused on three strategic areas broadly. One was academic optimization, which we all know is just a nice word for retrenchment. The other two are recruitment and retention. We're in the second, I believe, renewal period of looking at the strategic plan, making adjustments, and determining how to move forward.
Sure. So before I tell you a little bit about what's going on at the University of Akron, as I thought about this group and the collection of universities up here, which are very different, one to the next, I thought of some of the things that all of these institutions have in common, and probably most of the others in this room as well. We all face a rapidly changing world, so much so that you think of things like artificial intelligence that are literally changing the landscape daily. That makes it difficult to do strategic planning, and I think it puts an emphasis on agility and being nimble and really having the feelers out and being responsive, not getting overly wedded to your ideas. We all are involved in an institution of academia that is known for innovation in the thought that goes on in classrooms, but less known for innovation in sort of the business model and how things are delivered. So just in terms of how dramatically businesses have changed in every other sector, the traditional college experience doesn't look as different as some of the other things around us. And yet you talk to young people, my own children, and it makes me feel very old. Like everything else is changing really fast. Our model probably has some catching up to do in terms of the delivery system. And then everybody in this room is a fiduciary who took an oath to use, to provide our expertise and help in whatever we can so that public resources are put to the best public use. So I think those are like some of the common factors that we all share. At the University of Akron, we actually had a very difficult period of retrenchment, to use that word, in 2019. Luckily for me, I wasn't on the board yet. It was really tough. It was a reduction in force and some really painful, hard decisions about some programs that were not viable and that were not, that we could not continue. This is not to say that every change that we need to make has already been made. It's a constantly evolving picture, and we're really paying close attention and trying to focus on the educational experience, as the core, most important piece, and sort of getting rid of ancillary activities and accepting opportunities to privatize some of the ancillary, activities that have to happen on a campus that are not tied to the educational experience. So we still got work to do. We're really focused on it. And I think one thing that's really important as an institution that has been through some of this painful change is the relationship with faculty, and our president and his efforts and his cabinet's efforts to build trust and a very open conversation with faculty has been hugely important to getting through this. Not that everybody's been happy all the time. That is absolutely not the case. These are hard conversations, but having those really open lines of communication and building the trust, I think, has been key to what we've been able to accomplish so far, and will also be a big part of where this goes in the future.
Greg? The president of our university has just entered his 6th year, and I describe our relationship as a board with our president as he being our thought partner. I think it's incredibly important for board seats and board members like all of us to push the discussion on strategy. It's also, to me, Jeff, your term strategic direction versus strategic plan. I think strategic plans have a tendency to go on a shelf and gather dust. What's the strategic direction of your institution? And we have long-term strategic discussions with our president. What's the school going to look like in 25 or 50 years? We also have short-term discussions with our president that he gets paid on. He's bonused on how he does on the priorities for the institution on an annual basis. Anybody on that board knows what our president's 3 short-term priorities are and long-term vision. The long-term vision that we have realized is providing affordable education and helping these kids get jobs. We have a co-op program which connects with our business community that gets kids in the workforce while they're being educated. And that's been very successful for us. And the affordability number too, again, as board members who sit above the president of the university, we have the ability to set parameters under which he will be judged. So strategy is a ball that really is in our court. One of those priorities for us is the affordability issue. And in 2022, 56.8% of our students had an average of $24,936 in student debt. That's come down from the previous 5 years, from over $30,000 per student. And I think that progress can be pointed to due to the fact that we've made it a priority for our president. And it's simple, focused leadership. And I heard the other day one of our administrators independently through some consultant work we did complained a little bit about maybe some micromanaging. Well, I know what micromanaging is. We don't do it on that board. I like to hear that from an administration because many administrators don't want to be managed at all. They want us to be rubber stamps as trustees, and that's not the job we signed on for. So, in these challenging times too, we're certainly in a state of flux in higher education, and that makes long-term strategic thinking more important than ever.
Great points. I have one question maybe for Mark, and then turn it to the audience to ask you about both your strategic directions and maybe questions in as much as these institutions have explained it. Mark, you said you left shortly before COVID. I think one of the things, and by the way, Greg, I appreciate you mentioned another one of my friend Gordon Gee's statements besides the one about irrelevance that Senator Cirinio mentioned was he would tell audiences, I don't believe in strategic planning. And everybody would kind of drop their mouths. He said, because they go, I believe in strategic action, as Greg said. And, maybe that is just a statement, but to that point, Mark, you had a strategic plan at Miami. You left at COVID, trustees turnover. How do you sustain a strategic plan? I know you have to refresh it every year to look, but have the things that you tried to establish when you were chair continued? If they haven't, why not? Were they a problem? How do you continue them?
Well, given the COVID-19 statement, the plan almost blew up by itself. The one thing that clearly changed at Miami, and Mary Shell, our current chair, is here, and she's going through, I don't know if you're calling it strategic planning, but it's a hell of a review. Maybe that's a nice way to put it. And one of the things that really changed at Miami is we are a huge net importer of students. We used to be 40% out of state. I don't know what we are these days, Mary. It's down to what, 22, 3? Still 40? Okay. But in that case, many of those were foreign. Now, I know we have lost a lot of those, a lot of Chinese, as a matter of fact. So when you think about that net tuition revenue, and Miami is the most expensive state school, I mean, we know it. I think we've done a nice job in trying to bring down our administrative costs. U.S. News and World Report recognized us a few years ago for that, but there's been a lot of pressures put on. So to your question, Jeff, it's hard to maintain, and you have to be willing to kind of blow it up. There are always priorities. Some of our academic priorities have certainly taken place. There's a new data sciences building going up that's obviously huge for the state of Ohio with the large investment that we've had that will pay dividends. Health sciences, another thing that was mentioned earlier. So there are things that they are doing that were part of the large strategic plan at the end, but some of the things that would have been nice to have probably get put on the shelf.
Questions?
What areas are you thinking of outsourcing? Are you seeing some economic efficiencies that are meaningful in that process? And maybe
Questions about outsourcing. If each of you can address it, that would be great.
So I'll start by clarifying the scope of the conversation at the University of Akron. It's not about outsourcing the educational experience. It's about looking at all the other things that have to happen around a campus that are ancillary, important to deliver well, but not part of the sort of core competency of delivering a great education. So the example that we've looked at or that we're considering is around parking and having an outside operator handle that and operate it for us. And I know there are a number, I believe Ohio State has done that in the past, and Toledo as well. So there's some precedent around the state of other higher ed institutions that have done this kind of arrangement and have reaped some benefit from it.
Chuck?
At Youngstown State, we had the opportunity in our internal audit department, and it was somewhat serendipitous because our existing internal audit director went to Kent State. So because of the geographic proximity that Kent State is to Youngstown State, we collaborated with Kent State and share, I'm not sure it's an outsourcing, but share internal audit services so that each university doesn't have to maintain the same level of expertise in every department. I know Governor Kasich, and I can't remember what it was that he encouraged universities to do more collaboration. I think there are great opportunities to collaborate more in certain areas, especially like IT and things that don't have to be location specific. And what we learned during the pandemic is probably most things don't need to be location specific anymore. But our best example is probably our internal audit services.
Greg?
On the outsourcing question, I think that this forum, obviously our education system is too siloed with 14 institutions, and us not really ever having a chance to meet like this. That seems simple, but I think important. Thank you, Senator, for arranging this. But we need to have shared experiences in the challenges that we've faced, and why not avail ourselves to the expertise in this room, because we all live it on a daily basis and probably have a tendency to get too siloed. And when you get too siloed, you lose the big picture as well. We have not done, we have not outsourced any of our functions. Our community college function is one that I think could see some consolidation in the Cincinnati area. But those kind of discussions can be challenging, but we are in a forever changing landscape in higher education. And if we don't think differently, we will not be successful.
Mark, you want to add anything? And then Chuck.
Just a real simple example. It happened after I left, but food service was outsourced. And it had great promise and efficiencies, but they ran into manpower problems the same as we did when we were doing it ourselves. So it's not always a panacea, but it's certainly something to look at.
Chuck?
I'd like to follow up, and I know Senator Cirinio's here. I think President Huffman left, but somebody brought up the low utilization report that has to be filed. I think it was 5 years, and now it's 3 years. One of the internal discussions we had, it would be helpful if perhaps somebody at the state level took those reports, took a look at them, and put a little pressure from above to have the universities collaborate. Because I think what happens to those, no offense to anybody, is they're put on a shelf, and in 3 years they'll pull them out again and look at them and say, that's a good idea. But with our proximity with Akron, with Kent State, I think we have 15 universities on both sides of the border, maybe 16 within a driving distance. A lot of this stuff doesn't make sense, and I think we could serve our students a lot more efficiently and a lot more effectively if on some of these low utilized classes that we decided who's going to do what. And sure, we're going to get pushback from the community, but we talk about economics. We just can't afford to continue these low utilized classes that have been funded in the past.
I think that's really important. And to a couple of points that were made here, it's easy to stand up here and say, we have to be strong. We can't rubber stamp. And I thought a very good point, it's not micromanaging. My experiences on the parking deal at Ohio State, which I think there were some problems with, but it's done. The one good thing that was done, I think, was it was fully explained, at least in my perception, to faculty and staff and students. And there was a lot of deliberation. And not everyone agreed at the end, and there were still people really unhappy. But I would say two things. We all really do need to be strong and make the tough decisions. But I would say they come with tough conversations first, and I'd rather have faculty or staff or students say, you engaged me, and we ended up disagreeing, than you did this and surprised us. I just think if you take the heat on the front end, you're a lot better off, and I think it's a lot more appropriate.
Jeff, I'd add something on that, and that is we're talking about challenging times. We're talking about tough decisions, and in our roles as board members, we can give our president the support to make the changes that need to be made. I mean, and I think that's critically important. So the president is not just on an island making tough decisions. He needs to work with his board on tough decisions, and then the board needs to provide the support that president needs to affect change.